Hello, which is my very first word to you. So thank you very much for joining this masterclass, and again, a huge thank you to the team at the Gemba Summit for putting this together. The goal today, I'm going to be very goal-orientated and very metric-orientated, is to save 10 hours a week. If you're not able to apply these learnings by the time you go back to your office by the end of this week, that means I didn't deliver properly on this masterclass. It's a masterclass come workshop, which means there will be work for you to do. I won't be talking for the next 50 minutes. You're going to actually be actively working on ways you can do this. 10 hours is those 40 hours a month. That's 8 marathons for any of you who might be currently in training for the marathon at the end of October in Dublin. A lot of training behind that. Depending on your speed, obviously, that could be 7 marathons, might be 9 marathons. 3 books read. So for any of you who want to read Brian Myers' book, Tom Hughes, Lean Made Simple, imagine the amount of books you could read a month if you were actually able to save that amount of time. And last but not least, it's a return flight to Australia-ish. You'd kind of get back to Dubai as such. So we very rarely quantify time in a way, and particularly in marketing departments or in digital environments or in knowledge worker environments. So those 3 words are interchangeable: marketing, digital environments, and knowledge workers, because we've got all something in common. We all have a lot of the knowledge in our heads, which is very different from a factory floor where you're often working closer with your hands. And I've been told that it's almost impossible to apply lean to marketing. I was told that back in 2010, and it's not true. So what I'm going to show you today is how you can apply lean to marketing, or if you're a knowledge worker, it could be from an architect's firm, it can be if you're doing anything to do in a digital environment, how you can save this time. So a typical working day for a marketer or a knowledge worker in today's world it's fairly head-wrecking. So on average, you have 3 meetings a week. You do, or typically 117 emails received and 40 emails sent. There's about 146 phone or apps alerts, which means you're generally going to look at your phone at least once every 6 to 7 minutes, sometimes once every 10 minutes, depending how good you are. That was 63 phone checks, you glance at your device. And then what I call the 15 frustration spikes. So these frustration spikes are the time literally you just push your hands around your head and go, oh, it's so annoying, right? Because in marketing, you generally don't have the practices where you can pull an and on. You don't actually have something like Fix What Bugs Me. You stop and you think, oh, how can I actually document this, right? And all that should change, because it's completely everything from a lean environment in a manufacturing environment can be applied to the digital environment. So 66% of knowledge workers report job burnout in 2025. So this is the highest it's ever been. So if you think about that as your own workforce, right, and think about how many people work in an office environment, that means 2/3 of them are burnt out. And if you're burnt out, you're not concentrating properly, you're generally not as present, you're not looking at ways to improve. So it's a huge amount of waste if you're actually burnt out. It stops things like flow. So this is essentially the same thing as what Brian Myers was saying in terms of the burden, right? How are your office workers actually burnt out? And I don't believe in burnout, is what I said in May 2022. It's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of hype, particularly coming out of COVID. Everybody was burnt out. It was the phrase that everybody was using. It's definitely overused, is what I felt. Till later in May 2022, I completely then found out I was burnt out. And I was burnt out from the amount of meetings I was in, from the amount of waste that I was seeing. And it was showing up by my brain just didn't click into gear as normally as it would. I didn't have the same level of interest in things. I was just dull. I was absolutely, I stopped caring about the outcome of projects I was working on. And me as a consultant, I'm supposed to be at the top of my game at all times. So if you don't care about the outcome that you're trying to drive for your client, it means you're not delivering on what you should do. You should be at the top of your game as much as you possibly can. I was making mistakes. And what I would say instead of making mistakes, I would say things like that was just an oversight. I didn't own the mistake. I was just like, oh, it's another mistake, so what? I was being oversensitive. Somebody would say something to me and I'd completely take it the wrong way. And then I was clock draining. So clock draining is a term that I use with me and my team when you get someone to talk in the room. You get the, inverted commas, talker, you ask them a question, so they waste up 7 or 8 minutes of the time in that meeting. So all of a sudden, I've got an hour billable rate done because you're actually going through it. You're constantly checking the clock. You shouldn't feel like that. You should love your job. You should, when the second the time is over, you're like, oh, I wish I had more of that. So these were the symptoms that I knew that I didn't know I was burnt out, but somebody said to me, "You're not yourself." So I saw an executive coach, and with the executive coach, I spent over 6 months working with, well, what's wrong? And the big thing was wrong that I was really lonely. I was lonely because the projects that I was working on, I was feeling like a complete and utter alien. So I was working with projects that didn't believe in lean, didn't believe in identifying waste, didn't believe in continuous improvement, often didn't believe in respect for people, all of these things that we know are part of the lean culture. So as part of that, the executive coach worked with me and said, well, what would make you shine again? What would make you light up? So we went back over my career and said, when were you happiest? So if it's a great technique as well from executive coaches, is when you do feel like, oh, and I might even, refer to Ryan Tierney and his example of, coming home and going, God, why is this so bad? And you want to look up, and same as if you look up, how to run a factory, lean pops up. If you put into Google how to run a marketing department, nothing comes up. All the vendors come up that are trying to sell you project management tools, right? They don't tell you how to run a department. They don't tell you how to manage all of these things. They teach you strategy, but they don't actually show you how to run a marketing department. So when I went back over my career, what I worked out is that what I really loved was back in 2012 to 2017 when I was working in operational excellence. And when I was working fully in lean and fully with people who actually understood the term and believed in the term and wanted to actually work in a lean way. So I do believe in burnout now, because after 6 months of that, so if that ever happens to your teams, or if you're actually noticing that, again, it's something to stop and realize that actually in a digital and marketing environment, the sign of burden is often burnout, because they've got too many things going on, too many meetings, too many emails, too many distractions. And my journey back to lean, so for the first 17 years of my career, I spent 12 years in Australia, so I worked as a senior executive in some very big companies. It was very much an international role, so I was all over Australasia looking at things. But I always had the same type of flavour of making sure there's metrics in place, making sure you understood capacity. So a lot of the same things that lean actually teaches you. And then in 2008, I started working for a metal sheet manufacturing company, consulting to them. And then I saw factory floors, I saw a lot of things and thought, why couldn't this be applied to marketing? Nobody was applying this to marketing, why couldn't it be? So they were a lean company, really enjoyed it. And when I moved back to Ireland in 2012, I then decided to study for my Lean Six Sigma black belt. So I started with the green belt, absolutely loved it, did the black belt, absolutely adored it. I felt like my brain had finally met the other aliens who thought like me. And there was about 60 people in the course, on and off between the different belts. And every time they go, what are you doing this for? Do you not work in marketing? So it was the same bias time and time again. You can't apply lean to marketing. I was like, well, of course you can. All of these principles can be applied to anything. There has to be a better way. How can I improve this? Leave it better than you found it. All of these things are completely relevant to the office environment. So I did the Lean Six Sigma black belt, and then afterwards I did a number of VP marketing roles. When I interviewed for Smurfit Kappa, I'd also done a Scrum as part of Lean as well. I wanted to learn more about Agile and software development, so I went off and did a Scrum Master. And when I was being, through my interview process of Smurfit Kappa, I was asked about my rugby experience. Because I said, that's great that you play rugby. They assumed that a Scrum Master was something to do with rugby. They had no idea that it was software development. During that time, I was invited to so many different things. I was invited to a ladies' lean group, which I was so excited about. I got there and it was the Sheryl Sandberg Lean In crowd, because again, they assumed the term lean was the Lean In book. I got invited to present and do masterclasses of the lean startup in terms of the lean canvas, because again, they assumed I was an expert in it. And I was like, no, it's Lean Six Sigma. And every single time I was told, but you can't apply that to marketing. That's just essentially the fun police coming in looking for efficiencies. So again, there's all this bias. There's ridiculous amount of bias that you can't apply lean to marketing, and you absolutely can. In April 2023, after my burnout period, I started working with the AIM Centre. So how many of you here know who the AIM Centre are? They're based over in Sligo. Please, show of hands. No one? One person? Okay. One of my colleagues, therefore that's why you know it. So the AIM Centre is absolutely amazing. So it's a centre dedicated to advancing innovation in manufacturing in Sligo. So they look at everything to do with best in class of what's coming down the line in AI, what's coming down in terms of warehousing, whatever it might be. They are absolutely excellent in terms of knowing what's happening globally. So they do a lot of tours globally around the world of what's brilliant. And I worked with them for a period of time, consulting to them. And again, that reawakened my love of manufacturing, seeing the order, seeing visual control, seeing waste actually identified and spoken about. And it's from there then I started building out the lean toolkit for marketers. So that lean, no matter who you are, can be applied from a marketing viewpoint. And it was still kind of okay. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was about 6 out of 10. I'd still meet most people and nobody would have a clue what I was talking about. And they just go, that's that weird one who does that strange efficiency thing. And they'd have no interest until June 2024. I met the wonderful Alison Roddy at the Lean conference. And she was like this amazing ray of sunlight. She was described by Matt as the fuel that you put, that ignites your lean journey. And that's exactly what she is. And with her enthusiasm and excitement, she was telling me all about this amazing place that sounded like Disneyland, Lean Made Simple tour, where you can go and see all those tours. Because even though I was a black belt, I tried to get on some of the tours before, even though with Enterprise Ireland and all of those, which were great, but unless you were actually attached to a manufacturing company, they had no interest of you seeing the tours because they assumed you wouldn't understand what a manufacturing plant was doing. They assumed that you wouldn't be applying it to your own area. So I got to see the Lean Made Simple tour, and as Alison mentioned, came out the Lean Made Simple tour about 10 miles down the road, pulled in on the petrol station on the left-hand side and just rocked in the car. And I was like, wow. So again, show of hands here who's been to Lean Made Simple. Yeah, like it's amazing. It's amazing in terms of what they've done. So I was there going, right, how can I possibly do something like this for marketers? How can I get marketers as excited and as passionate about Lean as Ryan has made his team and the Lean Made Simple community? And that's what we're doing today. And that's what led me to Lean Thinking for Marketing. So it's all because of the guys here. This is the tribe, right? This is the tribe in terms of really wanting to apply Lean and making a big difference. So even though I'm only launching it now or in the past 6 months, I've been working on the toolkit since 2012. And what the toolkit essentially is coming up with all of the gaps and the solutions that I see that don't happen in marketing that you can apply. And it's a show and tell. So you show them an example so people understand, okay, that's what I should be aiming for. So you've almost got that visual control aspect of it to be able to apply it. So there's over 50 ways to solve waste. So again, throughout the little time of burnout, I took a couple of months off and I mapped all of the different issues that I saw in marketing teams. And there was over, I think, something like 180 I had mapped, the main issues that I saw. Again, from leading teams, from consulting to teams, from working in over 30 industries, 27 countries. You see a lot. Even though you think you've seen it all, you just see the same patterns because you've never seen it all. And that's what this toolkit does. This toolkit teaches you how to solve waste in a marketing environment. So if we look at the different areas of it, you've got the top area, which is strategy, structure, skills, and performance. Then you've got leadership, culture, and continuous improvement. You've got insights. Because marketing, when people say that Lean can't be applied to marketing, it almost makes my mind boggle, considering marketing is supposed to be the voice of the customer. And if the whole ethos is Lean, is supposed to be about only what adds value to the customer, marketing should be the primary place that you add Lean to. So I was always confused when people didn't think that you could apply it that way. You've got digital first ways of working, you've got collaboration, more ways of working, MarTech stack, communication, presenting, and internal influence. These examples here are just the ones that I've chosen for today. As I said, there's over 50 cards, and I pick and choose them depending on the client that I'm working with, relevant to their industry. And that's the full set of them there. So today, what you're going to learn is the 8 ways of marketing. Because a lot of when we presented at the Lean Cluster back in July, most of the photos that were taken was how to describe how actual waste shows up in a marketing environment. So we're going to go through that. We're going to talk about the top 3 offenders and how you can solve them and save 10 hours in each of those areas. And then we're going to give you some tools and fixes so that you can apply them as soon as you go. But first, I want to test some myths and conceptions. What you think about Lean in general and what you think about Lean in marketing. So although Matt asked you to put your phones away earlier, I'm going to ask you to take your phones out now. Done the quiz? We're going to show how the waste show up. So we're going to go through this really, really quickly, and I'm going to ask you after each waste for a show of hands, so then we can see kind of after each of the 8 ones, which of these you've experienced yourselves. So the first one, transport. So most people get transport and motion mixed up from a digital environment. They find it quite difficult to know the difference between transport and motion. Transport is the physical side of things, right? In terms of existing documents back and forth, sending 17 versions of the same PowerPoint instead of collaborating in real time. So how many people do that? Send a document, here you go again, here you go, rather than just jumping into Microsoft 365 or Google Docs and actually working on in real-time collaboration. Interestingly, I've never once in my life come into a company where they've got a standard for real-time collaboration. They just assume everybody knows what real-time collaboration is, but they've never mapped out what actually good collaboration should look like, how you use comments, how you add people, how you give tasks. They just assume everyone knows. So again, it's one of the areas that we generally work with companies first on going, right, how do you do real-time collaboration? What is your standard? How do you teach people how to do this? Moving data between multiple systems that don't integrate, so endless copy-pasting between platforms. Show of hands for this one. Yeah, that's one of the big ones that show up. A way to solve that basically is actually looking how they integrate and sometimes building integration into them, particularly now with a lot of the low-code integration tools that you can, makes that an awful lot easier. Uploading and downloading the same file repeatedly. I do that constantly until I had to stop myself and go, hang on, why am I doing this? So you download it, you don't save it properly, then you go look for it again. Again, that's where 3S comes in really handy. And then walking across the office to fetch a printout from a machine, that rarely works. Inventory, a backlog of marketing requests waiting to be processed. So briefs or content updates stacked with no clear status or owner. I know one company that does not suffer from this who are in the room because their marketing manager is particularly good at managing their inventory and Kanban board, which is over Clearhill. So I've seen that in action in terms of how they manage their marketing requests. It's just world class. It's fantastic. So we will be talking a little bit about that, the great work that Orla and her team are doing there to make it all really visible. Campaign drafts that never go live. So final. How many people save documents as final? Yeah. Okay. So all of your other stuff, the inventory is the WIP file for all of those. But you know what? Exactly the same as the Brian Myers example with the manuals. You'll never delete them, God forbid. But do you ever go back to them? No. So again, I'd literally think of the fire sign and get rid of them. Because your final is a reason that you've actually done your final, and rename it so that people, whoever's looking at it, knows that it's just the last one. Software licenses paid for but not used. This is an interesting one I'd love to hear from the audience. So I'm going to ask for the mics to go round. So one of the biggest issues I find in teams is lots of tech. They can do the same thing, but actually they don't use the tech. So is that under skills underutilization, or is that inventory? What do you call that in your company? When you have a particular technology that you're probably only using 30% of. Anybody like to volunteer what they class that in terms of lean waste? No takers? So I put it under inventory, only because it's not being used, but some people put it under skills utilization. And then you've got reports generated regularly but never read, which is the example that I gave you of the company for 52,000. You've got motion. So this is probably the one that comes up a lot, searching through your endless inboxes, folders, or Slack threads, just trying to find the file. Again, that's where 3S makes a massive difference, and also ownership. So total ownership makes a really big thing there, giving total ownership to somebody for that particular area to make sure it's clean for when they find the file. Switching between 12 different apps or browsers to complete one task. You've got navigating approval chains with far too many steps. So that's when you haven't actually mapped out what that approval chain should be. This is the one that again crops up a lot because you assume the approval chain has to be X, Y, and Z because you haven't applied the likes of total ownership or ownership such as a ratio of responsible, who's accountable, who needs to stay informed, who needs to contribute, which is a typical way you'd manage a campaign. Whereas here, sometimes you'll actually send it to everyone and you'll have the blind CC, the normal CC, etc., all the way in so that you don't actually need that amount. It's too much motion. Or walking around to track somebody down instead of just pinging them a message. Now, again, it depends. If you're looking to increase your steps and that's something good for you, then that's great. The next one is waiting. So delays or sign-offs for a 2-line social post. So the amount of times I've seen in companies literally could take up to a month to get a social post sign-off particularly in high regulatory environments. So anything to do with like hedge funds or finance or something, again, because there's no quicker process to get that through the loop. Refreshing Outlook to see is it finally arrived? Is it there? Sitting through IT downtime while systems crash, standing around for access to printers. Then you've got overproduction in terms of building 50 slides when the exec team only wanted 2. That's very common, right? Because you want to give all the information possible, whereas here you just actually want to look at what do they actually need. The biggest issue with this is it's the way it was always done. So they assume, because their predecessor might have done it that way, that that's the way it's supposed to be done. Very rarely do I see a marketing team go to the board and say, what you actually want to see. They just assume the board wants to see certain information. They don't go back to the board or the executive team and go, can you tell me exactly what you want to see, why you want to see it, how does that inform your decision making? So most people don't do it. They just think, oh, I'll just add it all just in case. Creating 12 campaign variants, again, the just in case. It's no different from the manual that Brian showed us in his example. Regular reports that no one opens all the time. They just, oh, I'll just generate another report just in case. That still could have taken that person 3 hours in a month. You add that time up, and it was complete waste. Sharing updates with large groups who don't need the detail. That's, again, your CCing side of things. Your over-processing, as Holly mentioned here, or reforcing the same numbers into Excel, PowerPoint, and Tableau. We're going to show you a quick way to do that in the second masterclass in terms of how to get your information from Excel really quickly into PowerPoint. Duplicating data across entry, multiple systems, requiring 5 people to approve something that only needs 1. And that goes back to the whole radical candor of, why do 5 people need to approve this? So who's got the total ownership over this? Like, why do 5 people have to be informed in this? Do you not trust that one person to do it? So it's having the tougher conversations around that. Spending hours fixing fonts and layouts for a report no one reads. That's something I do all the time. Now, not the no reports, but I always spend ages fixing fonts and layouts. Complete over-processing. Doesn't add any value. I might think it looks nice, but it doesn't add any value to the end customer. Defects in terms of incorrect or inconsistent figures. Campaigns going out with broken links. The 404 page is a classic example. Or your SEO not working because you haven't actually put the right backlinks in or the right terminology to your imagery. Software releases with bugs identified immediately by users who were testing them, or miscommunication from teams leading to duplicated work. Again, a huge offender, right? The amount of duplication that can work because teams didn't communicate properly. And then skills utilization. So also, if any of you have been to Seating Matters or on Gemba Docs when you see the large skills matrix, very rarely have I seen this in a service-based business where people can actually understand exactly all of the skills. If every company had one of those, it would be so much easier to visually see exactly what skills they have. Teams don't ask for ideas that could save hours of work. You very rarely have continuous improvement or improvement time where people come up with ideas unless you're a lean company. Not training staff to use the tools they already have access to, or people left out of decisions where their expertise could add real value. And that goes back to not having it visual in terms of what their skills actually are. So, waste is everywhere. So how are you going to actually see it going forward? And this goes back to the whole waste goggles side of things. The biggest issue, particularly in office-based environments and in marketing teams, is they've never been taught how to see waste. So if you haven't been taught how to see waste, and this sounds very complicated, you know, when you go through Tim Woods, how do I do this, how do I do that? It's just too hard. Whereas when you actually clean up a certain area or when you work on a certain campaign and you show how you're able to get it from 42 hours down to 17 hours, by doing these things, that's how you get people on board. And then you explain what the wastes were along it. So that's what I've always found is the best way. But it's empowering people to actually want to improve. So the top 3 offenders by far are meetings, multitasking, and miscommunication. Meetings are the biggest of all. Just going to check our time here. So meetings, overall, virtual meeting, on average you've got 62 meetings per month. So that's roughly about 46.5 hours a month, right? If your meeting is 45 minutes each. Over half of those are waste. Then you actually, if you were to do a meeting audit of your own diary, right, you'd actually find that half of those meetings are not needed. So what we're not saying is all meetings are waste. So things like your morning meeting are absolutely crucial in terms of informing. But the amount of meetings that happen that are not needed, or when you're only being a passenger rather than a driver on it, you're just attending it because you have to. You're only half listening, right? You might have your camera off if it's Zoom because you're going up putting a wash on or doing something like me. If that's happening, you do not need to be in that meeting because you're not being present in it. And that's what goes back to, again, the whole ownership side of things. So if you're noticing your behaviors, that you're not that interested in it, you need to question, well, why am I in this? What value am I adding? How am I actually adding value to this organization if I'm not adding value to this meeting? And it's doing a really, really valid audit of it. So if 23 hours a month are wasted in meetings, what's the cost to a business? So again, when I run this exercise with companies, when you actually work out the salary of that person, you break it down by the hour, you put it in, you say, for example, I ran one meeting when we were in Smurfit Kappa, and we had a lot of agencies in it. And it was a meeting with about 15 different people. It was about 6 different agencies. And that meeting came to literally 10 grand, right? In terms of all the agency costs in the room. Did you get 10 grand's worth of value from that meeting? So when you start thinking about time as value, rather than thinking, oh, we just have to go because time lasts forever, you've got to think, what value did I get from that? Did we actually get the value that we needed? The biggest issue with meetings is that people don't often have a clear plan, they don't have a clear objective, they don't have a clear outcome of what they need, and check back to see, did they actually get the outcome at the end of that meeting? So how do we actually solve it? So again, showing you some ways from the toolkit. So the 4 ways that we solve, and I might ask for a show of hands for people who are at the Lean Cluster event in July. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we've got 12. So you've seen some of these tools already. So I'm going to ask you how many of you actually put some of them in place. Because these tools are really easy to implement, and it's about how quickly can you implement them to save you time. Because if you get that 10 hours back, you're able to work on stuff that actually means more to you. So the first one is the synchronous video. Then we're going to talk about meeting scheduling, preparation time, and then follow-up actions. So synchronous video, that's the proper name. It's a terrible word, synchronous video. It's a really, really horrible word. That's the category that it's in the MarTech stack. And what that means being asynchronous is it's different to normal video. It means it's not in real time. It means you record and you send in a time that suits you. So with a synchronous video, it means that you can do whatever you want. And the main players are Loom and Vidyard. So hands up who's already using Loom. 1, 2. Okay, so I might ask somebody to volunteer how many Looms they might do a week and what they use Loom for. Would you mind repeating that, please?
Yes, sorry. I'd maybe send 1 or 2. If I'm doing design briefs, I'll send that to a web developer as opposed to jumping on meetings and wasting the time there. I'd also add in, which we'll probably touch on, Fathom for AI transcribing of the meeting, so it gives us all our minutes at the end of it and knowing whose tasks we're assigning at the end. So it's been really useful.
So you're using those tools. Were you at the Lean Cluster?
That's where I've been using Loom before, but then tying it with Fathom has been massive. We've done that across all of our meetings. Even our morning meeting has Fathom. So if people aren't there, you just touch base and you've got it all. So really good.
So this is often the expression that I use. You know, how many of you have been on a roller coaster in your life? Hands up. Okay, most of you. If you describe to somebody, what does it feel like to be on a roller coaster? It's almost impossible if you've never been on it. Because if you're trying to describe to somebody, oh, your stomach goes up and down, it's scary, it's all of these things, you can't get it unless you've actually done it. And this is what these tools are like. We're trying to explain what really strong, future-ready teams use. And until you use it, you don't actually see the massive rewards that it gains. So with a synchronous video, it is just absolutely brilliant. Because what you're doing is you're able to give context to things. So rather than sending a big long email, lots of people, get stuck in terms of trying to explain things, or the way they might explain it is different to how somebody reads it. With a synchronous video, you're just recording your screen and explaining exactly what you want. So anything to do with briefs, say, for example, I'm in the middle of doing an extension at the moment. I sent back, the architect sent me through the drawings. I sent back an asynchronous video going exactly, move this here, I want this, I want that, I want this. I was able to do that in 4 minutes. If I'd emailed that, it would have taken me 45 minutes, and I'd have had to have probably another 2 meetings with them. And the architect came back and went, oh my God, that's amazing. I wish we could do that. I was like, well, you actually can. They're now using it, right? So it's so simple. It takes less than 5 minutes to get set up on a synchronous video. It takes 10 asynchronous videos to get your confidence, and then you're laughing. You're sorted forever. So this is an example of it for just people who may not know. This is an example of me talking to a Word document. Well. And thanks again for your time last week, and also to Petra for showing me around the Accenture Song Droga 5 venue. It's just so perfect. Here's a little bit more information about the event, and attached is this just kind of a briefing document, what I've just been using as a catch-all of information about it. So just as a recap again, the whole ethos of the Marketing Meetup, which is a community that started in the UK back in 2016, is all around being positively lovely to people. And it was started by a guy called Joe Glover. So this example is just to show that sometimes you can have your full camera up, sometimes you don't. So I'd say percentage-wise, probably 20% I have my camera on, 80% I don't. Because 80% I'm sending them to designers, or I'm sending it back to copywriters, or I'm sending it to people who don't need to see my face giving feedback. But if I'm sending a proposal and I'm trying to give something in context, I'll often do a big circle at the start and go, "Hi, I'm Diana," then it'll go small circle and I'll walk them through the proposal. So particularly for sales teams or for internal teams that might not know you, depending on the size of your organization. But if you don't put your camera on, just don't put your camera on. So we do one construction consultancy, and they use it, and it's been game-changing for them because we did a continuous improvement research project for them, and one of the biggest issues that their clients had was that they didn't get up-to-date updates on a Friday. And this was a mixture of engineers and project managers and quantity surveyors, etc. And they just wanted an update what was going on. But the quantity surveyor felt, that takes me 4 hours every Friday because I've got to go through the project plan, then I've got to go through the cost plan, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to write the email, it takes me so much time. But that's what was of value to the client. So instead what they do is they just pop up the project plan, they talk about where they're at, they pop up where the costs are, and bang, it takes them 10 minutes. The client loves it. The company loves it because they can look at the analytics to see whether or not the client even looked at it. And then they've got a track record of exactly what was given. And you can pull out the transcript from it as well. Or you can do it for training videos. You can download the MP4 and put them into your system. So it's brilliant. The reason why it's so good is it gets sent as a link. Whereas if you to record your screen, you have to send it as a QuickTime file. You have to download the QuickTime file. You have to play it. It's a lot of issue. With this, you just press play. And one of the biggest things of feedback that I've heard from people is anybody with different ways of learning find your synchronous video so much better because they're able to play it back and play it back and play it back so that they understand what's being requested of them. So again, you don't assume that people learn the same way as you. It's really good from a training perspective. And it's cheap, right? The Loom is free, Vidyard is free for the first 10. Loom is free for up to the first 5 minutes. It's so simple to use. It's literally... it's 10 times quicker than typing. You can replace over 35% of your meetings easily like that with a synchronous video. There's over 40 million users. From simplicity, you literally just press a button and off you go. It can record your screen, it can record whatever you're doing. And then from an adoption curve, you've already got the majority of people using it. So I suppose you've got to think yourself, are you still, you don't want to end up being basically on the laggard side of things. It's just so easy to use. So my question to people here is, you should be able to think of, when you leave here today, is 5 ways I could use a synchronous video. How can I replace what I'm currently doing with a synchronous video? Because it can be used for so many different things. There's literally over, I would say, 300 use cases. If you go onto the Loom website and you go into their examples, they show you all the different ways that people can use it. So if you're thinking in your head, 1, we'd never be able to do it, I'd question that. People would never get on video. They don't like the sound of their voice, is some of the issues that we often hear. 25% of people have a fear of being recorded. But if you're sending WhatsApp updates in terms of continuous improvements anyway, you should be able to use a synchronous video. 82% of privacy concerns, you can add on locks to it so that only the people that have the code have access to it. Fear of making mistakes while recording, that's called being a human. Then you've got technical challenges in terms of how you're using it. Like, if that's your issue, that is not an issue. It is so simple. You literally press a button and off you go. And if you've got any issues with downloading it, reach out to me and I'll literally run a webinar for you to show you how to actually do it. Because for people that might not be great with tech, it can be a little bit scary. Show you no problem whatsoever. Because the more people on a synchronous video, the more waste we solve. Bandwidth of sending large video files, again, that's where it's brilliant. It just sends us a link. that you actually access. There's no bandwidth in it whatsoever, and having to look good in camera. So absolutely, sometimes, yes, you need to make an effort with your appearance if your video is on, but other times you don't. You can just there's often, like I've been working to 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sending asynchronous videos and I just don't have my camera on. So again, you look at how can I make this work for me? So I save 7 hours a week using Loom. So project status updates, feedback on design briefs, proposal summaries, training course overviews, budget reviews and submissions, and board updates. So all of those, just in a week, that's a typical week of what I might do, I'm able to save 7.5 hours of what would have taken me before. So it's about you going, right, how can I do this differently? Going back to Ryan's phrase of, how can I improve this? Looking at your meetings. Would this be suitable for synchronous video? So the next one in terms of scheduling, meeting preparation, meeting actions and follow-up. So meeting scheduling tools like Calendly, or you've got a lot of them in Teams as well, which are great. Meeting preparation is that POA side of things. What's the plan for this meeting? What's the objective? Have we got the outcome? And then meeting actions, which is all to do with Fathom. So how many here use AI note takers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many here who went to the Lean cluster session have started using Fathom since? So what's amazing about Fathom is, or Fireflies, there's lots of different ones that you can use, but Fathom I found has got the highest accuracy, is you basically have the meeting, it joins into your meeting, it takes the full meeting, but you can add lots of little buttons in, so you can add, oh, that was a great insight, and it can just take that part of the meeting out. So you get your meeting purpose, you get your key takeaways, you get your Instagram improvements of what your topics might be. For example, that was what our meeting was talking about in that particular one. So then I'm able to copy those, and what I've built is then I've built just a very small little integration so that in my project tracker, I just use Google Sheets. It dumps immediately into it with the name on it so that we have our tracker at the end of the meeting. So in our next meeting, we know exactly who's responsible for it. And you can add that to monday.com, you can add that to loads of different things. They've just done a very big integration with Asana as well for anybody that might use Asana here. So you can go in, you can see the meeting, you can go back and check on things when things were said. But what I find brilliant about it is the transcript. So the way that I would do it a lot is I would do a case study for clients, whereas I might interview the client about how great the case study was. I interview them on that. I take out the transcript. I've built an agent into ChatGPT ready to populate what the best practice of a case study should be. And then I upload that transcript. It mirrors it across to what it should do. Then it gives me the gaps. I can add in those, what the gaps should be. And I'm able to do a case study in 5 hours to what used to take me 39 hours. So that's how powerful it can be when you use the transcript part of it. So again, any further questions about it is just brilliant. And again, it gives you the ability to go back from a communication perspective. So I use it from internal meeting summaries, I use it for client meeting summaries, and one-to-one mentoring. So in summary, there are 3, 11 hours, how to decrease meeting wastes, and then how to start this week. So first off, review what meetings you're currently doing, which are actually adding value, and then start small, start with yourself. List your meetings, label and rank them, which add value, calculate the cost, test out a synchronous video, replace 2 meetings, track the time saved, and record the time saved. That's your little action plan. So you should be able to do that on Wednesday or Thursday after this is over, and see how much time it actually saves. So multitasking and miscommunication are going to be covered in the next session directly after this one. If you are interested, the wonderful Orla Bibby over here will be doing a session with me in terms of sharing her digital Kanban board and their marketing workflows. Sorry, I lost my voice on Tuesday and haven't talked for 5 days. That session's going to be brilliant. It shows how, with the plan that her and her team have built out and that she's led, saving 8 hours a week. And we're starting a WhatsApp group. So again, similar to how the Lean Made Simple group are, this is going to be really specific to marketing digital environments. You'll have to get accepted onto it, because you'll have to commit to being able to share the improvements that you made as well. And then we're running a boot camp in February for lean marketing leaders so they can start applying a lot of these tools themselves. There are the services that we do. If you want to get in touch, go to my website. But please, please, please drop me an email to say, I'd love to get started with a synchronous video. I'd love to get started with AI meeting note takers. So that if that's the barrier that you don't know how to do it, don't let that be the barrier, because I can absolutely show you. And it'll be, again, as all for free, so that everybody can actually stop wasting time in meetings. And I look forward to I'll ask for a couple of questions, and then we'll see you in the next masterclass. Okay, so we've got a couple of new people who weren't here in the first session. So we're going to do a very quick recap in terms of the goal today is all about saving 10 hours a week. And when you think 10 hours a week, the goal really should be tracking your time to figure out, how did I save that time? So it's not just oh, hey, let's save 10 hours a week. You should literally be giving yourself a goal. How can I save 10 hours a week? And adding up incrementally these minutes and these tools in terms of how to do it. Because it's a massive sense of satisfaction. And again, you see the progress from it. 40 hours a month. This time it could be 8 rounds of golf. It could be 4 Netflix series, depending on how much you like to binge. Or it could be 5 full nights of sleep. They did a survey last year, and they said, if you were able to get time back, what would you replace with it? And over 40% of people said sleep. So if that's what you want, or it could be spending family time, whatever you want, is how do you actually reclaim time to do the stuff that actually is important to you? So in session 1, we covered the 8 wastes, how they show up and examples of them. We mentioned the top 3 offenders, and then we talked about how to save 10 hours by reimagining meetings in particular, and how to use a number of tools. We touched on 4 tools from the Lean Marketing Toolkit. So again, here's examples of the 8 wastes that we discussed. And just in a very quick summary, the main things are overproduction, is too much content, unused assets. You've got waiting, things really like bottlenecks, things stuck in limbo. You've got motion, that whole digital treasure hunt, right? Motion is all about where's that file, where I'm trying to find it. That's one of the biggest issues there. You've got defects, duplication of work, things that didn't work first time round, reworks, and then overprocessing. And again, personally, overprocessing is the biggest waste that I fall into, that I find that I have to pull myself back and go, hang on there now, and that's overprocessing, or the just in cases as well. So we talked about meetings, and we talked about how to save 10 hours in meetings. We talked about the toolkit. From that toolkit, we identified asynchronous video, meeting scheduling, meeting actions and follow-up, and we're able to show how you could save 11 hours. And today, we're in the session now, we're going to show how waste shows up every day due to multitasking, miscommunication. They're the other 2 really big offenders. How you can save 10 hours in these 2 areas, and then again, how you can start this week, so there's no excuses. So with multitasking, let's talk about multitasking. So I often hear, and I'm going to ask people in the room to put up their hand, who is fantastic at multitasking? Okay, you're all very clearly not. Okay, I would have previously, I'm great at multitasking. I'm actually not. I'm very not at good, but I would have liked to have thought I was good at multitasking. The whole phrase of, oh, I'm a great multitasker, means you get lots done, right? But multitasking versus task switching, they're actually one of the same things. So if you're multitasking, doing lots of different things, you're switching tasks. You're doing lots of different things at the same time, and it means you're not actually focusing on any one of them immediately or in one slot. So how well do you task switch? They're going to test it. So can everybody please make sure, so those on a Remarkable, can you create a fresh page on your Remarkable or your iPad? For those of you who've got a notebook, turn to a complete fresh page. For those of you that don't have paper, both Tiernan and Elizabeth have got spare pieces of paper. So if everybody can get a blank piece of paper in front of them, if your notebook has lines in it, that's no problem whatsoever. So please get a blank piece of paper. I told you it's a workshop, you have to do some work. Okay, so on your blank piece of paper, you are going to draw a line across the page. Halfway down. Okay, big line. Halfway through the line. Holly, you're very good. Like, you're well ahead. So big line through the page. Okay? And before you do anything, now there might be some activists in the room that just want to jump in and do this immediately. hold your pen back till you hear the instructions, right? So till I say go, you don't do anything yet. And I'm going to spend the next 30 seconds telling you what to do. So just hang off there now, okay, and just wait for the instructions. You're going to write one word on the top half of the page, then you're going to write a number on the second half. So that's why you've got the line in between. So word on the top and number on the bottom, okay? So it's going to be something like this, okay? So what you're going to do is write the phrase, happy birthday, one word at a time. So again, don't jump in to do it yet. Just follow these instructions. And then you're going to write 20 to 5, one number at a time. So these are just examples for you, okay? You're not to start just yet. Example, you're going to go happy. Then you're going to go to the bottom of the page and go 20. Then you're going to go birthday, bottom of the page to 19. Then you're going to go 2. Then you're going to go 18. Then you're going to go you. Then you're going to go 17, and so on, till you write the full happy birthday. Now, you get to choose who happy birthday. It can be to your mother, it can be to your dog, it can be to whoever you want. You choose the name on it, okay? So get yourself ready. Pens in action. Okay? So you're going to end up with something like that at the end, just so you know what you're aiming for. And I'm now going to press start, and I'm going to time you to do it. One word at the top, one letter at the bottom. And then raise your hand when you're finished. Okay, we all done? Okay, so the quickest person was 53 seconds. The average was about 116. Okay? So your next exercise, can you please turn that piece of paper around or get a fresh piece of paper on your Remarkable? So completely fresh exercise. Okay? Draw a line in the middle of your pad. Okay? Now let's do it again. But this time, you're going to write out all the words to Happy Birthday song in one clean flow. And then you're going to go 20 back to 5 in one clean flow. So you're not switching. So go. Okay, the majority of you finished? Okay. So, you went from an average 53, kind of 54, which was the quickest, down to 38. No, sorry, 28. And the average time now is 56. The average time the longest was 1 minute and 40. So you can see just that concept alone, it was more than half quicker. And that's the next time you think about multitasking or task switching, think about how much longer it actually takes you when you're doing one thing without stopping and starting. And the reason why this is important is the whole area of attention management. So have any of you read any of the articles around attention management from Harvard Business School or the book Attention Management? It's all about the amount of time it takes you to get back to a task when you stop and start. So task switching costs us 40% of time. There are so many studies that prove that. And that's been the fallacy of I'm great at multitasking. People assume that if you're multitasking, you're juggling everything, you're getting through so much more, and you're not. It's taking you 40% longer to get through things. So the hidden costs of task switching takes 23 minutes to refocus after each interruption. All of these are proven studies, right? Where you start something, and this is a prime example. I'll give you an example of me preparing this presentation. I stopped and started till I physically had to dedicate some deep work sessions to it, and I was able to get through it so much quicker than the stopping and the starting. Because you start it, you get about 15, 20 minutes in, something else takes your attention, then you have to go back, where was I at that, where was the files for this? So on average, 23 minutes to properly refocus after an interruption. Error rates can increase by up to 50%, right? So you make more mistakes. So go back to your lean terms there. If you make more mistakes, it's a lot more rework. And this study here from Stanford is very interesting. You're easily distracted and less able to retain information. So people that multitask all the time, they actually get so used, their brains are so used to doing that, that they actually generally aren't able to concentrate as well. And you have to retrain your brain in order to do it. So This is a diagram that I absolutely love because it can be used for so many different journeys. People assume that your workday should literally, from a task switching perspective, it's like that. But if you're looking for flow from a lean perspective, you need to monotask. So monotasking is focusing on one task at a time rather than multitasking and constantly going in and out. Now, clearly, we all live in a digital world with a lot of distractions. You cannot have a full day like that because you're always going to have to move to something else and do something. So what is the actual solution to be a monotasker? And why is it so hard to be a monotasker is the question, because I know I find it really difficult. Is there any, who else here in the room, a show of hands in terms of finds it difficult to be a monotasker? Yeah, I'd love to be. I'd love to be one of those people, and sure, I'm presenting on it. And people go, you must be so organised. You must be fantastic. No, I'm not. I have to put these guardrails in, because otherwise I'll be off here and there, everything, because there's always things more enjoyable. And it wasn't until I actually found out that it's not your fault, right? And this is a course that I did with Inventium in Australia, and I did another course in Harvard Business School, actually in Harvard Business School for a week around it. And it's about how easily your brain gets addicted to task switching and why we love it. So this guy here, B.F. Skinner, anybody come across him before? The godfather of behaviorism. So in 1938, he did a really interesting study. And he basically did it with mice, and he did it on giving random rewards. So it's called the reward behavior study. It's quite famous, right? But it's in 1938. It's been validated since back again in 2022. So, close to being, over 80 years old, it's still actually valid. And what he did was, he did two different experiments, and he basically, from a positive reinforcement perspective, the little mouse would go in and press the lever, and every time it got food, it would be delighted. And then he started analysing, what if I don't give it all the time, just randomly? And the mouse got more excited when it was random. So once you get used to something, you expect it, right? And that's why you've got things like which reinforcements get more engaging? I've given you the answer. Positive reinforcement or positive random reinforcement, right? So the answer to that is reward given randomly. Doesn't make sense. You would think if you're given praise constantly that you'd prefer it, but when it's more random, people want to expect it. So it's the same as the waste in terms of checking your inbox, right? When you don't know something's going to be there, or when you're waiting for something, you constantly check. When you know it's going to be there because somebody said it's going to be there at a certain time, you no longer have that same behavior to want to check all the time. And that's what our brains do. So this particular study was in 2021, and it's basically all about the spontaneous cortical dopamine impulses to reward. It's a fairly heavy study, right? But it's actually very interesting. And Harvard Business Review simplified this particular study and say, why do our brains feel like this? So this is literally why slot machines work, because you're constantly pulling the lever to look for a random reward. If you knew you were going to get it at number 7, it couldn't be random anymore. And essentially, that's what our phones are. So every single time you look at your phone, it's essentially like having a slot machine in your pocket. That's why we check our phones so much, because the little dopamine hit of seeing that little red button, is it there, is it there, is it there? You don't get the dopamine hit when you know it's going to be there. So for some of your apps, you'll know they'll be there. Doesn't give it to you, but it's the ones that you're expecting. It could be randomly, I'll just check if I got a message. So your phones use that dopamine loop as slot machines. This is what that study shows. It helps explain why are we addicted to our phones. Because of course you find these amazing people, I do these digital detoxes and I turn my phone off for 4 hours a day, or I put my phone on grayscale, and whatever you do, never check your phone in the morning. And absolutely, I try all of those things, and then some of the old habits slip back in. But literally our phones are built to distract us. So each notification, a message, it delivers that unpredictable reward, which the brain finds more addictive than guaranteed ones. And this is a huge waste, right? We check our phones 144 times a day on average, right? To bring that back from a 10-minute mark, it's once every 10 minutes. So if you bring back, if it takes 23 minutes to refocus after a task and you're checking your phone constantly, it's completely eating into it. So from a digital environment, this is one of the biggest wastes because it's taking your time. When you're in a manufacturing environment and say you're a welder, you don't have the same, you're literally focusing on the task that you're doing, whereas in a digital environment, you've got a lot more opportunity not to be a monotasker. So, shallow work is completely addictive, and it should be, because there's loads of emails, particularly if you're getting lots of emails, lots of meetings, because you feel productive, there's lots of motion, right? There's things going on, it's great. You feel like you're getting somewhere, but at the end of the day, how far have you actually got? It's easy and it's effortless. So much easier to ping off a few emails and do that because you feel you're getting things or have quick chats. Deep work is really hard. Getting yourself dedicated, particularly if you're a procrastinator, which 99.99% of people are, it's really difficult to get going. And it's built to hook you. So again, it explains why all these happens, and it avoids the discomfort. Because shallow work feels safer than deep focus. You don't have to really deeply put your brain into gear. So, deep work. So I might ask for a show of hands in terms of how many people have read Deep Work by Cal Newport. Okay, so you'll know a lot of his thinkings in this. So deep work, he coined the term deep work. Deep work is where you focus on a particular task, like monotasking, for a certain amount of time, so you get from A to C really quickly, but you know what your point of B is in between in terms of your signal that you're making progress. So he basically says that developing a deep work habit is moving beyond intentions and adding routines and rituals. So it's almost impossible, or I've found the teams that I work with when we're implementing deep work practices, it's almost impossible to put deep work in if you just go, I should go off and do deep work, right? You don't jump up and go, let me get some deep work sessions in, because you've got so many distractions coming in. You have to physically put rituals and a routine in place to do deep work. They say on average you should do 4 to 5 deep work sessions a week, right? I've never been able to do that. If I get 2 deep work sessions in a week, I am golden. I'm delighted with myself. Sometimes I aim for 3, but a deep work session for me I've classified in 2 different ways, right? So, and we'll talk about your input as well in terms of getting deep work done. So deep work sessions for me are either 60 minutes or they're 90 minutes. And I have an accountability buddy where for the first 60 minutes, and I have one on a Monday and I have another one on a Thursday. If I'm traveling, that moves to a Friday. And we're each other's buddies, and what we do is we do the 5-minute, the check of no chats, basically is what are you working on? And we agree what that progress is, what the progress at the end we want to achieve. They're working on one thing, I'm working on something else. We literally work on it solid for 50 minutes, and then the last 5 minutes is the check-in in terms of how you've gotten. And you turn off all email, you turn off your phone, you turn off everything. Generally, I'm on a Google Meet with this particular person. We call them acceleration sessions. We don't talk, we're muted, we've got our cameras off, but that is the accountability that I personally need to do these deep work sessions, where I do them routinely. And it can be on the most randomest of things. So, for example, one of them was at Christmas time, I hand-wrote loads of Christmas cards. I did 150 Christmas cards. It absolutely wrecked my head. I needed 4 deep work sessions to get through that. There's no way I would have done, because I was stopping and starting. It was taking me 5 times longer to do it than a deep work session. So you choose what your deep work session is, but they are absolutely game-changing in terms of productivity. And then I'll talk about the other one, the other type that I do as well. But I'd love to hear from at least 3 people brave enough to volunteer what they do in deep work, particularly those that have read the book, and how they make deep work happen for them. Who's going to volunteer their insights?
I did a PhD, actually, on this stuff. So I'm really interested that you're talking about it. I can't wait to chat to you more. But ironically, to actually get the PhD done, I needed to learn how to do deep work. And so for me, it's first slot of the morning. It's using a little blocker called Cold Turkey, which is $35 lifetime, so no subscriptions. And you remove the ability to do anything else. And there's a comedian called Jerry Seinfeld, which most of us are probably aware of. And he makes a deal with himself. He says, the only thing I can do is write or do nothing during my deep work slot.
Yep.
And so that's what I do. I just sit there. I can't do anything else. I have my time block ready to rock and roll. And I can either do the deep work or I can sit there and stare off into the space. And surprisingly, giving yourself the option to stare off into space is actually, I found it to be very helpful.
Yeah.
Because maybe for 5 minutes, you're just I don't want to do that. And then boredom kicks in and you're like, sure, no, I'll give it another go.
Yeah.
And so, those are just things that have totally been a game changer for me.
So they're brilliant examples. And what I love about that is deep work is very personal. Like productivity is deeply personal. You need to figure out what works for you, but hearing what other people do to learn from that, I wonder would that work for me? So again, what's the app that you said is called? Cold turkey. So again, I'll be writing it down, downloading it, where it blocks everything else off so that you get mapped in. So we run a lot of deep work sessions, where again, what we do is we run 3-hour sessions with teams. We get them to volunteer what productivity tips that they have. We create what's called knowledge walls. These are always generally in person. Sometimes we do them remotely as well in Miro or Mural. And what they do is they put all of their tips on it on a knowledge wall. They go up and put post-it notes on it so that you're not telling people what to do. You're learning from loads of other people, and that big knowledge wall full of post-it notes is all the ways that they do it. And there's a whole industry built around it now, right? So it's giving it your full attention, no distractions. When you switch off, close your inbox, focus completely on finishing something that matters. So how can you make them happen? So I mentioned the 5-55 rule, right? So I call them, with that particular accountability buddy, we call them the acceleration sessions. You have Cave Day. Have any of you come across Cave Day? So it sounds a little bit like the Jerry Seinfeld kind of group type thing. This is like a whole business model that they've created where you sign up and you literally just do deep work sessions, right? You can have different subscriptions that you do. So if you're a solo entrepreneur or if you're in a team or whatever it might be, if you just need that extra thing, you just log in and you basically say, what's your accountability? They have a facilitator who says, what are you working on? You say what you're working on, bang, you do. At the end of it, you have to say what it is, right? Have any of you come across Ali Abdul? Yeah, he's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, right? So he makes productivity complete and utter fun. He runs an academy that focuses on these as well. And he does the 5-55 rule a lot. And his book, Feel Good Productivity, and his website are absolutely brilliant. I don't know how many YouTubes, I think there's something crazy. Is it 2,000 YouTubes he's got on there, videos? Literally, if you want to be productive, he is the person to go to. He's a doctor who gave up being a doctor because he was so interested in productivity and gives really good tips. And then these are the second ones that I do, which are 90-minute sessions. So again, I'm just giving you examples that work for me. So I love the 5-55, the 60 minutes, because I can fit that into my work day. Often on a Friday when I'm working on something particularly strategic, something I would do a lot of strategy reports where I want to make sure that there's a lot of input into it. And I will do a lot of mapping or something. I will do what I call my 90-minute deep work session. And I go to a coffee shop. The reason why I go to a coffee shop, again, is that there's a lot of research that shows when you're in a coffee shop, the decibel of 70 decibel boosts creativity. If you're trying to problem solve, go to a coffee shop. The sound of that coffee machine in the background actually switches your brain into gear to think about things in a different way. There's been about 4 or 5 studies on it to show why it's so good. You get fewer interruptions, right? So if you're in a position to be able to go to a coffee shop to get that kind of work done, it's that consistent background noise, again, increases your focus because you're just actually blending in what you are. And it actually gives you mild accountability, right? Because you're like in person. You don't want to be just sitting there doing nothing. You want to get working. So what I personally do, what works very good for me, and I've been in this probably for, God, I'd maybe say 6-7 years. The biggest tip for me is I got the Apple, the Macs, the big Pro ones. They were a fortune, but they were the best investment ever because they completely block out the noise, put them on, don't care, put them in, and bang, I do get my 90 minutes in. So everything else is turned off. I'm only working on the file that I'm physically working on, or sometimes it might physically be pen and paper mapping, trying to do a framework or something, but again, game-changing. So for a longer one like that, I go to something like that, but again, you figure out yourself what works. But there are 2 deep work things that are game-changing that you can actually save time. And here's an example. So strategy deck or proposal writing, what used to take me 4 hours over 2 days, I now get done in those 2 50-minute sessions, right? And again, I time myself, I give myself the accountability to get it done. So that's over 140 minutes saved. Planning a client workshop agenda, so again, figuring it out, there's actually a huge amount of time generally in that. It's not just as simple as, 10 minutes. I work out the stakeholders, I work out who's doing this. It used to take me about an hour and a half. Now it takes me 50 minutes, so I've saved 40 minutes. But when I'm doing 3 or 4 of those a week, or I might be doing something like 6 of those a month, that's where the time adds up. So just those alone give me 3 hours saving a week. When you multiply that over a month, and you've got your 12 hours. So 3 hours saved. So the next big offender is miscommunication. So most people assume when we talk about miscommunication, there's lots of different forms of communication, right? But again, it's my favorite phrase, it's the illusion that it's taken place. People assume you've communicated, right? They just assume they have without actually checking, have you? You've got verbal communication, you've got non-verbal and visual. So with your verbal, you've got, your emails, your meetings, your presentations, your reports, your team messages, right? That's all your verbal kind of ones as well, right? Obviously, what I mean by that, it goes into the likes of your written, but then you've got your non-verbal, so that's your cues. That's, the folded hands, that's the yawn, that's the facial expression, right? It's even silence is one of the biggest issues that you'll have in non-verbal communication, the different cues. But then you've got visual communication. And we're going to focus today on visual communication because every session I go to, people spend ages on the first two, but actual visual communication is the one that makes how we show information is what people rarely teach you about, right? They assume you all know. And PowerPoint is one of the biggest offenders there, and dashboards and charts, because they all assume that you see things in the same way. So again, one of the areas in our toolkit that we run so many sessions on, and we run these sessions with my colleague, Chanel D'Souza, who's down at the back, because 60% of all waste shows up in the formatting of PowerPoints, particularly in leadership teams. So I was working with a very, very large retailer. I won't mention what country, but it was looking at how their marketing team. So what we do is we do a lot of observing. So we observe and we watch how their teams work. And we could see that they were spending over 60% of their time, 60 to 80% of their time in PowerPoint, right? Spending all the time in PowerPoint, doing reports on this, updates on that, everything. And they were working in PowerPoint so inefficiently, I actually thought it was a joke. I thought it was a candid camera the first time they showed me, because I thought they're going, no, but here's really what we do. Because they were working in PowerPoint as if it was like 1990. They had zero skills. And it's because they were never trained. They didn't know any better. So they just didn't know how to actually do it better. So it's about how do you standardize this, right? Because the biggest offenders of ineffective presentations are the teleprompter slides. So the teleprompter slides, most people do them, right? They put that amount of text up on a slide, and then they read from the slide, and they read to you. So what happens is that your brain is reading the text, they're listening to your voice reading it, so you might as well just be a teleprompter, right? What you want to do is engage a bit more, and you want information slower so you can read, you can talk to them as you're bringing people up to speed. The Frankenstein slides, the amount of times we would look at decks and slides, and it's literally, how much information can I possibly put on this slide? And you do that naturally because you want to fit all that information in, right? You're not thinking about the negative space or the space the information needs to breathe. So you put lots and lots and lots of information in there, but the person you're presenting to can't read the information because you're asking them to listen to you, you're asking them to look at the slides, and then you're asking them to read all the information in there and all these different pictures. Whereas what you would do in this particular slide is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 pieces of information on that slide. To breathe, that would need at least 6 or 7 slides. And the issue is, people go, just give me 10 slides. Whereas it doesn't matter if it's 100 slides, if you're landing the point on just one slide. And what the difference is that when you present versus when you send through a report or using PowerPoint for a report, that's when people say, just give me 10 slides. Because they want the information visually in a document, but if you're presenting that information to a room, it's a very different style of communicating. Then you've got the lipstick on a pig. So the amount of times, so again, the expert visual designer and communications expert, the amount of times we've worked in companies and they send us over a deck and go, can you just make this pop? You're like, no, I can't. Because it's like putting lipstick on a pig. It might solve the issue now, but it's not actually solving the symptom, which is you have not standardized how you present. The modeling, this is another one again in terms of we get a slide like this and say, can you just make this look pretty? And they literally want us just to put some extra color on it, and that's their version of making pretty, right? It's not actually changing the delivery of the message. This one here, this is a great example of what you actually want me to look at. But you look at this and go, oh, it's lovely and pretty. But actually, what are you asking me to look at there? Are you asking me to look at the project phases? Are you asking me to look at the key milestones? Are you asking, what are you physically asking me to look at? So again, this is where you use color to your advantage at times, but you use accents of colors to show what you want the people to look at. This is another example. Loads of words over an image, over something else. Your brain can't physically see that information that quickly. So you're having to use more effort to see it. This is another one. They're not bad, but they're not great. So what is that slide asking you to do? There's no unified way. You don't actually know. Is it asking you to do a step 1? Is it asking you customer support? Is it asking you to step 2? The way that you would have done that is circle first. This is how we do customer support. Then just step 1 would have come up, grayed out. Then step 2 would have come up, so that you're bringing people on the journey of what the information you want them to know is. And then this one, we love color. And this is, you would be shocked at how many slides we actually see like this that hurt your eyes, where people think it's great, but it's actually hurting your eyes. So, and also let's go back to 1999. Some people use PowerPoint literally as if it's got zero design in it. This is a classic example, right? That most people will use PowerPoint for because that's all they've ever known how to use it. But with some simple tweaks, you can make that slide look amazing by having standardized templates. So, applying lean thinking to your slides. What are custom templates? And my colleague down in the back there, I'm actually going to ask you to give her a very big clap, which is going to really embarrass her, because she has absolutely transformed some of the biggest presentations ever. She's the one who's been behind all of my slides. She did an amazing job with Ali McFadden. So just to please me, would you mind giving her a clap? So she's a visual communications expert. And we worked on a project together where, have any of you heard of Nancy Duarte? Show of hands. Nancy Duarte is probably seen as the global leader in the visual communications expert. And she runs a company called Duarte. They did all of Al Gore's presentations. They do, if you go on, you'll see the most famous. So the biggest companies in the world use them. And they cost at a starting price $40,000 to work on a presentation. Their average fee is about $180,000 to work on a presentation. We worked with a company who had a lot of money, and we employed Duarte to work on those presentations. Their net worth and their average net worth individual was worth 100 million. So you can imagine, if you're worth 100 million, you want your slides to look as if they're quite snazzy and lovely. So we brought in Duarte, worked with them. Chanel worked with us, and Chanel was as talented, if not more talented, than the experts that were charging that amount of money for it. And it's all about these small techniques, right? So most people say, most designers, like our Fergal Hughes and other designers in the room, most designers hate PowerPoint because they find it tricky to work into. But the big thing is, if you use pre-formatted slide template systems, you can make everybody in your organization a PowerPoint pro, if you just teach them and standardize how to use this. So this one here on the left is what we would call a template, right? But this on the left is what most companies have. So 95% of companies, when we go into audit and I say, show me your PowerPoint template, they show me something on what's on your left. That's beautiful. You know, it's a lovely brand, right? And they've approximately got maybe between 7 to 10 slide templates, but they're not actual templates and they're not a system. On the right is a system, okay? So on the right here, this is a little video that's going to play now in a second. We're going to show you some tips. So when you go in and you press new slide, you go up to new slide, and this is all of the choice that you have of the different slides that you need to be able to put a presentation together. And it's done by auditing the decks that you would normally use so that you've got everything you would ever possibly need to be able to do it. That's when you're creating a new deck, right? You will also have then pre-made decks ready to go for your sales team, or whatever it might be that are already using this. But it means that you're saving so much time, instead of going back over, bringing this in, bringing that in, you've got them all ready to go. And one of the biggest issues that people don't use is the outline view tool in PowerPoint. So again, hands up. Anybody here use the outline view tool in PowerPoint? We've got 1, 2. Okay, so 2 people. So the information on the right, if you're copying over from, say, the likes of ChatGPT, this is like, say, 4 little templates or 4 little lines. And to move this quickly, what you do, what most people do is, they'll go in, create a new slide, Then they'll get the content, say for example here. They put the words in, create new slides. They'll copy this over, they'll do the first line, and they'll paste it. Then they'll shimmy it around so that it fits the formatting. So again, how many people in the room do this? Yeah, majority people. And they'll go a bit bigger, thank you very much. And they put the right color in. They might not have the right colors loaded into their PowerPoint. So that there just took, I think, 37 seconds, just for that alone, right? And then you bring in all the other ones, and you do the same. Whereas once you use outline view, you go up to outline view, little button there on the left. If you've got a template system in place, you copy over the text. Stick it into there, and it does it immediately. So that 37 seconds that it took you before just took you 2 seconds. And if you're doing 30, 40, 50, 60 slides, you can do the maths on that in terms of how much time it saves you. Exactly on the right. So that's just, and there's lots of other tools as well. Do you see the graph on the side? How you can take in images, how you can save images, how you can add an image in there quickly to make it look good because you've got pre-templated images signed off, ready to go. And then last but not least, you've got your chart titles, where you can bring in a tool here that literally by adding a bolt-on into your integration for your chart title, you bring it in. Most people would have to go press the different bars to make the different color right. And you can literally just by one press of a button, it puts into your branding colors. So again, that's one of the biggest time savers you can imagine for executives working on PowerPoints that don't have PAs to do this, or even the PAs that they do have for them, they're not using these tools properly. So this is an example. This is an example of the amount of slides that I just have for my business. I've got 3 people who work with me, constantly working in PowerPoint slides, so it's something we needed to improve. These are all the templates that I have ready to pull in at any time. And 98% of the workforce report needing PowerPoint coaching. Again, nobody's ever trained on it. So how can you empower your teams with ones to stick? So again, if I just show you the time that it takes for me, formatting of deck, 60 slides, took me roughly about 10 minutes a slide, 600 minutes, was taking me 300 minutes, now down to 5 hours. LSQ charts are learning style questionnaires that I would do a lot in workshops. Used to take me 180 minutes, or one of my team, now it takes me 30 minutes. So we saved 7.5 hours just on that alone of formatting. So 3 hours in deep work, 7.5 hours on those, 10 hours, 10.5 hours. And they're just some of these tools, right? You buy like all of the tools. So how do you start this week? Schedule 2 deep work sessions for yourself. If you don't have an accountability, get one, right? Make deep work a team norm. That's a big thing for you as a leader. Make it normal. Get yourself an accountability buddy. Standardize your slides with templates that you use most, and improve your PowerPoint skills by adding in the likes of Bright Slide if you do a lot of charts and stuff. So, as I mentioned, I'll be doing a webinar with Chanel where she's going to be showing 10 top tips for PowerPoints as well. So if you're interested, email me, go to my website and say interest in your webinars. You'll get a webinar invite to it. It'll be a live webinar, so you can ask questions as well on it. And then, as I mentioned, the first one we're kicking off with in the first session is with Orla, Bibi from Clearhill, the marketing director there, who'll be showing you live project management on our Kanban board in action. We've got a Lean Thinking for Marketing WhatsApp group. If you're interested in joining, email me for it. There is a process to make sure you're actually doing continuous improvement on it. And then we'll be doing a boot camp in February where you get the cards and you get to use them in your organization. And that's it. So thank you very much. Any questions?